everyone, I'm Rachel Poli with Ari Meghlen, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. We're on episode 24, and this week's question is, should authors stick to one genre or write in multiple genres? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss a show. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a like. Now, it's not often you see authors writing books in multiple genres. Normally, they pick a niche they work well with and go with the flow of writing in a specific genre. If they decide to branch out and write in multiple genres, such as fiction and nonfiction, some might use a pen name for one of the genres so as not to confuse their readers. So we're talking about whether authors should stick to one genre or be free to write in multiple genres. There are a few reasons why you should write in just a single genre. One of those reasons is to dominate the market. It's been recommended that if you want to dominate the market, and what we mean by that is like a brand name for that genre, you should stick to a single one. This way, once readers see your name, they'll immediately think of your books in that specific genre.
Exactly. It's one of those things that is recommended if you want to be a big name in a specific genre. If you want to be a big name in writing, if in anything, like when you think of horror, you might go straight to Stephen King. When we think about whodunit novels, you might think Agatha Christie. When we think about comedic fantasy, we may think about Terry Pratchett. These are names that are branded to their genres, and they've become like a marketing beacon that is easily recognizable. You will often see names of these authors larger than the title on the cover, which, by the way, I really hate. I've always hated that. That's because the name itself is telling what you're going to get. King is horror. Christie, whodunit. You already know it's what you want to read. That's why they do it. You are selling the author because people already love these authors, and when they bring out books, people are just ready, money in hand, to go and get it.
I also hate when they have the author name in big, giant, bold letters and you can't even find the title on the cover. I understand why they do it. I get the marketing tactic, but it is super annoying. Like, I just want to see the title, and I want to see the pretty cover too. I don't want a big name taking over the whole cover.
That's it though, isn't it? It's like, it even starts taking over half of the cover. Then you have the title, and it's like, is there even a need for book designers now if they're going to do that?
Right. Yeah, true. With that said, another reason to stay under one market is if you want to make a decent amount of money. Most writers don't go into writing if they want to become rich, but it can happen. There are certain writers who can make a full-time income from writing. And one of the reasons they do it is because they stick to one genre. These authors, such as Agatha Christie and Stephen King, have dominated their markets, thus making a ton of money. So if you're writing to create a full-time income and want to be a full-time author for a living, then sticking to one genre allows you to do so. Your readers will know exactly what to expect from you, and you'll sooner or later become like an expert, so to speak, in the genre. The more you write in your category, the better your books will be, and you'll gain more of an audience. People will see your name and know exactly who you are as a writer and want to buy your books.
And obviously, I know Stephen King did move out and do a few other things that were outside of the horror genre. His name is associated with horror. So while, yes, you can dabble, if you do want to go for the big books, then the single genre works the best. And not only that, it does make marketing a lot simpler. And let's be honest, we could all do with simpler marketing. After all, you know who your target audience is. Word of mouth between fans becomes easier. If they're all like the same genre, it is easier to get them on board with your new book because they already like what you do and they know that you're going to be bringing out something similar. You're not going to suddenly shock them with, like a historical fiction when they've really, really got their teeth into the whodunit. And as you said, the more you write one specific genre, the stronger your voice becomes, the stronger your style becomes. And then that is another part of your branding that just adds to the rest of it.
Well, that's just it, because you said that authors should stick to one genre so that they don't shock their readers by throwing out like another book in a totally different category. And some authors have done that, like J.K. Rowling, for example. She created the Harry Potter series, and then she tried to branch into a different audience in a different genre. I think it was a different genre. And even though she wrote under a pen name, people still knew it was her. And that book didn't do as well as Harry Potter because people just expected more Harry Potter from her, despite the fact she said she's all done with Harry Potter. But readers latch on to their favorite stories and they constantly want more. Even if it's ended and even if it's a good ending, they still want more. So when their favorite authors do try to branch out, it's almost like a culture shock in a way.
Yeah. And I also think if you're going to try different genres, it's probably easier if you're like a nobody.
Yeah.
I know that sounds a bit weird, but I think if you build up that following and that presence within that genre, it is harder to move away and try something new and do it successfully. It has been done. We're not saying it doesn't happen, but I think if you're still a new writer, if you're still not brilliantly well known, I think it's a lot easier to mix in the other genres because the shock factor isn't as big as, like you said, J.K. Rowling. She did what she did. She wrote the Harry Potter. She had this massive fandom that just kept growing and growing. And then when she understandably shifted, you're going to get people who just aren't ready for it at all. And even though she'll probably find new fans who like the new stuff that she writes, it's hard because you'll always see the older fans, the bigger fandom that surrounded Harry Potter, and you'll always have that, oh, it's not as big, it's just not as big. You want to get the big bucks, definitely stick to your single genre. It is the best way, definitely, to reach the higher figures. I personally believe, and things I've read about, it seems to be that's where you want to go. But if you want to dabble, because some people want to dabble, then maybe do it early. Do it before you become uber famous, like we're all going to be.
Someday.
Someday.
But no, that's a good point because you should try out different genres when you're not that well known as an author or as a writer, because you need to kind of figure out what your genre is. Like you might love reading horror, for example, but you may excel in writing romance or something like that. Like you don't really know what you like and what your writing style is unless you try and you do all these different genres. So with that said, sticking to one genre can also make you feel restricted and stifle your creativity. Regardless of whether you want to make a full-time income from your writing or you want to be well-known, you should write for you, and you should always hone your creativity and your imagination. And if that means you want to write in multiple genres, then by all means, write in multiple genres. For me personally, I have too many ideas and so many different interests for various genres that I want to write them all. Mystery is my main and my favorite. And I tell people I'm a mystery author, but I also write flash fiction and I have ideas for fantasy novels as well. I love Marvel. I love DC. I have created my own superheroes. They're not on paper yet, but I would like to someday. So as much as I love mystery, I don't think I could stick to a single genre my whole career. I think I would get writer's block more often and I wouldn't be able to let my creativity stretch as much as it needs to.
Yeah, I am the same way. Fantasy has always been my main genre, but I also really love sci-fi, and I've also written some crime. In fact, I think when I started writing, like decades ago, sci-fi was the one I actually started with, and that has shifted to the back burner, but it hasn't gone away. And while I'd love the big books of someone like Stephen King, I don't think I'd want to restrict myself. And like I said, some of the big name authors who dominate these genres have written outside their works. Most of them are known by a single genre the most, and that's where they bring in the most money. That's where their biggest collection of fans are. And I think especially if you were, say, a traditionally published author and you stuck to one genre and then tried to move out of that, you may even get pressure from the publisher, because obviously they would want you to stick to the area that is most likely to bring in the money, because in the end, it's a business. Writing is a business, publishing is a business, and there will always be a business mindset towards some of this. Another reason I don't think I'd want to restrict myself to the one genre and aim for dominating that market is there seems to be a surge in notice that comes with that level of popularity. And I don't think I want that. I am happy to be a mostly obscure writer with a small cluster of fans rather than a massive name that is expected to write a certain way, write a certain genre, and if you don't, there's a huge horde of people who will turn on you really fast. So while fandoms are really cool, I don't think I'd want to have one so big around my work that it would get scary.
I totally agree with that. I don't want to be like super well known and popular or famous or whatever. I do think it would be really cool to have a little bit of a fandom and have readers draw like fan art or something like that of my characters. I think that would be cool. But I don't want to be like super famous or anything. So with that said, there's really no right or wrong answer to this. If you like a particular genre and you just want to stick to that one, that's totally fine. But if you want to test the waters with multiple genres, that's totally okay too. A piece of advice that you often hear as a writer is to read a lot. Read good books, read bad books, read in your genre, read outside your genre to learn new things. If you can read books outside your main genre, you can certainly write outside your main genre.
I think there is an importance of reading outside your genre, especially if you're a young writer and you kind of get caught up with one specific genre that you enjoy. You might be missing out on other things that you could be good at, like you mentioned earlier. And even if not, reading other stories, other genres can really help you, even if you decide to stick with a single genre. So if you think about it, historical fiction can help you write deeper backstories. Romance novels can help you add a relationship subplot. Mysteries can help you create twists and tensions and foreshadowing. And also, as you get older, you might find that your tastes change. I used to really love reading YA, now not so much. So tying yourself to a specific genre, calling yourself a YA author or the queen of sci-fi can make it harder if you want to shift your focus later. But then at the same time, if you do want to stick to one genre, having those kind of taglines can make it easier for readers to identify instantly, yes, you're somebody I want to read because I really love sci-fi or I really love YA.
That's all a good point. You don't think about it much when you think of the different genres, but it's true. Each genre has its own quirks, I guess you could say. Like, for example, as you said, mysteries can help create twists and tension, while romance is romance. I mean, even if you're not reading a full-fledged romance novel, there's romance in every book you read, or just about every book. It's some sort of relationship in some form, and romance books can definitely help with that. And yeah, your tastes do change as you get older. Like you, I used to read YA all the time, but now I personally feel like every YA book is the same in some sense.
Yeah, I think YA has become quite a saturated market. It feels like everybody's trying it now, which is great, and obviously a lot of people love YA, but it has become very full, and then you do seem to get the same repetitive stories or the same repetitive characters. I don't know. It's a weird one.
That actually brings up a point about getting your feet wet in multiple genres, because like YA, for example, as you just said, there's so many authors writing in YA that it's probably going to be harder for you to be seen among that whole mess of YA books. So especially if you're just starting out as a writer, it is a good idea to try different genres and just see what works for you and see where you get noticed, basically.
Also, following on from that is the concept of trends, like the vampire trend that kicked off years and years ago, still bubbling away, but it was obviously a lot bigger years and years ago when Twilight and all that came out. And if people had jumped on and started writing that, when it moved into something else, when, I think werewolves became a big thing, and then I know sci-fi started to come back up again, and I said like YA is going up. If you tied yourself to one genre to ride, say, a trend, and then that trend faded, it's up to you, whether you shift to another trend or whether you just write what you want to write and just accept that trends come and go. And maybe at the moment YA is still a big market and there's a lot of people interested in it, but that doesn't mean that in 10 years time Westerns aren't going to become the next big thing, adult Westerns or something else I can't think of. Wow, mine just gone completely blank, no idea of anything, just gone. But it's like there are trends and people follow trends, and then if they, once that trend goes, do you shift with it? Do you stick with it because you enjoyed writing it and hope it comes back? I mean, some trends just stay. I mean, romance has always done well, always. There are people who just love romance books no matter what, and you can throw in romance in YA, you can throw it in adult, you can throw it into fantasy, you can throw it into sci-fi, you can throw it into mystery. So romance always does well. But then there's others where, it'll do really well, and then the trend will die and nobody will want to read it anymore. So I don't know. There's another thing to think about. Trends, people, trends.
I hope all of our listeners are writing this down.
We should be writing this down.
We came up with a few more points as we were talking, and even now my mind is like, oh no. But anyway, I think we've covered just about everything that we can on this topic. So ultimately, it depends on what you feel is best for yourself and your writing, as well as your goals. If you want to dominate the market and aim to have your books give you a full-time income, focus on one genre. If you're doing it as a hobby and want to try different genres, then just let your creativity go and see where it takes you. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Do let us know whether you think authors should stick to one genre or be free to write in multiple genres in the comments or on Twitter using the hashtag #TheMerryWriterPodcast. If you want to get some extra content, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TheMerryWriterPodcast. You can support our show and get yourself some great rewards. So be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Merry Writer Podcast, where we ask all the right questions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Felt Tip Pens. We love to color code. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.